All right, welcome back to the Wildfire series, Quotes That Stuck With Me. Today's quote is less of a quote and more of an excerpt from an article written by C.S. Lewis entitled On Living in an Atomic Age. Here's the excerpt. In one way, we think a great deal too much of the atomic bomb. How are we to live in an atomic age? I'm tempted to reply, why, as you would have lived in the 16th century when the plague visited London almost every year. Or as you would have lived in a Viking age when raiders from Scandinavia might land and cut your throat any night. Or indeed, as you are already living in an age of cancer, an age of syphilis, an age of paralysis, an age of air raids, an age of railway incidents, an age of motor incidents. In other words, do not let us begin by exaggerating the novelty of our situation. Believe me, dear sir or madam, you and all whom you love were already sentenced to death before the atomic bomb was invented. And quite a high percentage of us were going to die in unpleasant ways. We had indeed one very great advantage over our ancestors, anesthetics. But we still have that. It is perfectly ridiculous to go about whimpering and drawing long faces because the scientists have added one more chance of painful and premature death to a world which already bristled with such chances, and in which death itself was not a chance at all, but a certainty. This is the first point to be made. And the first action to be taken is to pull ourselves together. If we are all going to be destroyed by an atomic bomb, let that bomb, when it comes, find us doing sensible and human things, praying, working, teaching, reading, listening to music, bathing the children, playing tennis, chatting to our friends over a pint and a game of darts, not huddled together like frightened sheep and thinking about bombs. They may break our bodies, a microbe can do that, but they need not dominate our minds. I love this excerpt, and it was a mouthful there. That was a lot. It was hard to get through, but I absolutely love this excerpt, right? C.S. wrote this in 1948, just a few years after the conclusion of the Second World War and 1 year after the start of the Cold War. And of course, he's talking about the atomic bomb, right? But he's also pointing toward a much greater, more deeply rooted, and more widespread human phenomenon. This is the human phenomenon of fearing the future. And this phenomenon is responsible for billions of lives not lived to the fullest. It's responsible for billions of lives, that's billions of people who have valued future possibilities more than the present moment, and as a result have lived only half lives. This is perhaps easiest to see in the example of the atomic bomb, right? Or a COVID outbreak, or a terminal diagnosis, right? When death in these modalities is on the horizon, it's easy to find examples of people who shrink away in fear and live half lives. But what about the more subtle examples, right? Let's look at the modern American man as an example. Most are busy working. They're worried about the finances. They're worried about their job security or job status. They're worried about putting food on the table for their family. They work for a better future. But in doing so, they forsake themselves and their closest relationships because they believe they will one day come to a point where their accomplishments will provide them with a better opportunity to value themselves and their closest relationships, right? A better opportunity to live deeply in the moment, connecting deeply with the people they love the most. In essence, they're living a life on hold. Let's use an example, right? Urban Meyer wins a national championship at the University of Florida, right? College football coach. He was back in the office that night prepping for the next year, right? He just couldn't stop working and preparing for the future, even long enough to celebrate a victory within his professional career. Or let's turn to the modern American school child. Most are busy preparing for a future. They're spending the best hours of the high majority of their days, which is to say the high majority of their lives, memorizing information. And nowadays, schools extend this information memorization session into the evening hours so that the majority of a human's time on earth for his first 18 to 22 years is spent in information memorization. They even use the terminology, when I graduate and enter the real world, as if the real world is not all around them right now. As if life is also on hold, just waiting for them to press the unpause button. Or maybe it's the modern American housewife. She's busy worrying about whether her children are going to succeed. She's worried about whether her family is keeping up with the Joneses. She's worried about whether the house is going to get cleaned or dinner is going to get cooked. She's worried about her marriage and her husband, who seems to be working too much. Or maybe she's just worried about when her next break will be from the chores, from work, or from the children. You see, life True, genuine, deep, moment-by-moment life is passing each of these people by. Everyone is worried about the next moment to the extreme point that the high majority of humanity is not living in the present moment. And here's where it gets sad. The present moment is the only moment where a human can find true peace, joy, love, connection, and satisfaction. Those most valuable of commodities don't exist in any other moment but this one. And if we allow our fears to take us out of the present moment, we also allow them to rob us of peace, love, joy, connection, and satisfaction. Jesus Christ said, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothes? Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they? Can any one of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life? And why do you worry about clothes? See how the flowers of the field grow? They do not labor or spin. Yet I tell you that not even Solomon in all his splendor was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, will he not much more clothe you, you of little faith? So do not worry, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or what shall we wear? For the pagans run after all these things, and your heavenly Father knows that you need them. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Therefore do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own." C.S. Lewis and Jesus are teaching us lessons in mindfulness, in presence, in recognizing, capturing, embracing, and digesting the kingdom of heaven that is before us. If we pay close attention, we'll find that the best moments in life aren't planned. They arise organically when the people living them have entered fully into the present moment. These people are sort of going with the flow of life. They're not on a tight schedule. They don't need 5 objectives for their interaction. They aren't trying to squeeze something out of the interaction. They're simply living alongside one another. Think of the belly laughs you've shared with other people. Do those come along when you're discussing your 401k or the 5-point plan for retirement? If you got a good financial planner, they might, but you get what I'm saying, right? To live life fully, we cannot be consumed with future possibilities. And when I say future possibilities, I'm mostly referring to fear. And this is what CS is referring to, right? It's what Jesus is referring to. If we're not careful, fear will invade and influence every moment of our lives. It will hijack our lives. It will keep us in a constant state of being half alive. And this fear is subtle. You have to dive deep within to become aware of it within yourself. But once you do, you'll see how this fear is driving all of humanity and society. And because this fear is all around us, it's even more challenging to identify. It's like being a horse living in the ocean with a bunch of other horses, right? Of course, we all swim. That's what we do. That's what we're optimized for. And then all of a sudden you find yourself on solid ground and you're like, what the heck? Those horses in the water are crazy, right? You get what I'm saying? Everyone's doing it, therefore it doesn't trigger anything within me that says this isn't right. Beyond that, until you identify the fear and the impact it has on you, you're immersed in it. In other words, it's like you're so zoomed into the fear that you can't see it. You can't pull up out of it. You can't zoom out enough to see it clearly, right? It's just the way you live. What are you talking about, Tristan? You're crazy. I don't see any fear in my life. Look closely at what drives your behavior. I spent the majority of my life caught up in worries about the future. I pursued a career in law not because I loved it, but because I thought it would provide financial security for me and my family. I feared the loss of my own life in my highly anxious and suicidal days. I numbed out of the present moment using drugs, alcohol, work addiction, technology, and various other distraction mechanisms. And although I'm acutely aware of my struggles in this realm, I still struggle, right? I still worry about the future. I still allow my worries to keep me from the present moment. I still allow the mindset that my worries produce to keep me from loving the people in front of me. I still allow the mindset that my worries produce to keep me from loving myself. Mostly, I allow them to create an inner tension within me and to hurry me. They ramp me up and keep me from peace and the state of being necessary for connecting with everyone and everything around me. Mindfulness, presence, awareness of your internal space and realm, these are the tools that keep us tethered to the present moment. The process is simple. As the ancient Greeks said, know thyself. You have to dive within and inspect all that's going on inside of you, which generally starts with the thoughts and emotions. From there, you start to recognize patterns, destructive thought patterns, destructive belief systems, and so on. And then from there, you act in calm, loving, faithful opposition to those destructive tendencies. You show yourself a new reality. You show yourself that the fear that has been driving your actions is a bogeyman. It's spreading lies and keeping you from the depth and quality of life for which you long. And of course, the more clearly you see this, the more you opt out of allowing this fear to rule your life, and the more you live freely in the present moment. Let's circle back to the quote. Toward the end of the quote, Lewis says, "If we are all going to be destroyed by an atomic bomb, let that bomb, when it comes, find us doing sensible and human things. Praying, working, teaching, reading, listening to music, bathing the children, playing tennis, chatting to our friends over a pint and a game of darts, not huddled together like frightened sheep and thinking about bombs." This is such incredible advice for quality living. And here's one more point to be made. It's not fear of the atomic bombs or COVID or a terminal illness diagnosis that will steal your life from you. It's not the big bombs. It's the little bombs. It's the day-to-day worries and hurries that will push you out of the present moment and keep you from seeing the opportunities to enter fully into life clearly. Your insecurities, your fears will keep you from loving yourself, the people around you, and life in general. To keep this from happening, it's important to discount the voice of fear and persist in entering into and enjoying the present moment fully. All right, thanks for your attention. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, share, follow, or subscribe. All of those actions help me reach more people with this message. Otherwise, take care, friend.